I am Dr. Unathi Makiwane, the president of Black Mental Health Matters. Today we are celebrating our first anniversary. Thank you so much for joining us. To give you a background of what we are about, this was founded on the 27th of June, 2020. We are a community that comes up here every week. We come to this global community where we meet and talk about everything that matters to us as a Black people. This place is very safe for all of us to talk about things that matter to us so that we can understand our humanness, our Blackness, and also understand the vitality of our mental health. So today, I am here to give gratitude to all the hosts, the panelists, and also to you viewers who have come here religiously because you love this place. You know this is a very safe place where you have come to learn everything about mental health. This is a place where we bring mental health experts. We bring people who have lived experiences, who come and share about everything concerning mental health. Today, I have a big panel for you. We have a wonderful day packed with packs that will empower each one of us here to live with eradicated myths, to live with informed decisions, because for the longest time, we as a Black people have not really understood the concept of mental health. But today, I would like each one of us, if you have any family member, any parent, any colleague who has mental health problems, to have a different view of that person, to have more compassion. If you are a person who is in leadership or who is in authority, to know that these people with these lived experiences of mental health, they have the same needs, they have the same opportunities, they have the same brains we all have. All they need is support, understanding. If you are a workplace that has not established a mental health support for your workers, for your employees, it's something that you need to think about. COVID-19 has showed us that we all matter. Not only just Black people, but all of us. We do matter. Without wasting our time today, we have a beautiful topic that we're going to kick off with. I have this beautiful panel for you. We're going to discuss gender-based violence, substance abuse, mental health. These issues are public health crises. We all know this is a global issue. This is not just for Black people. Gender-based violence is something that we are concerned about as a people. And if you didn't know, according to World Health Organization, 38% of women out there in the world will experience gender-based violence. And it's in the form of financial violence, physical, emotional. I don't want to take away from these speakers. We're going to start right away. On the top right, I have Kimberly Petty. Kim is a journalist in Jamaica. She's going to be joining us here. Next to her is Dr. Latonya. Dr. Latonya Thomas is out in the United States. She is a registered nurse, and of course, she's a nursing consultant, licensed nursing consultant. And she does other things. Below her, I have Dr. Megan Pickens. Dr. Megan has specialty in family therapy. She does a lot of things, and I'm hoping Dr. Megan actually will share some thoughts about her own lived experiences. She speaks fondly about how she actually moved towards the other side. Thank you so much, Dr. Megan, for being here to share such experiences, because people can relate to stories when they hear from the horse's mouth, from people with lived experiences who will show them or who will empower them with the tools to be on the other side. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. J, we also have you, sis. Unfortunately, I didn't get your bio, but you're going to have an opportunity here to introduce yourself. And again, I see Dr. Kevin is joining us. Dr. Kevin, are you there? Dr. Kevin is a psychologist, and his focus is African-oriented psychology. And I see also we have Daniel. Daniel is also one of our speakers here who also has lived experiences of rejection. Dan was here a few weeks ago. This is going to be a fun day, guys. I would like you to come up here, join us. Invite your families, invite your fathers, invite your mothers, invite your brothers, your spouses. This is for everyone. because I would like all of us here to live empowered, to live with changed mindset, to live with new transformation that will do better, and will live with less judgment, probably with zero judgment. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Today, as we kick off, our topic, like I said, it's about gender-based violence, substance abuse, and of course, mental health issues in relationships. Who do you want to start with? You probably want to know about what Dr. Megan has to share. Dr. Megan, do you want to unmute yourself and share with this community who you are and a bit of what you do, and of course, a little bit of what happened to you and where you are in your life today?
Good morning. All right, I'm Dr. Megan Pickens. I'm located in Arlington, Texas, in the United States. I received my PhD in marriage and family therapy last year at Texas Wesleyan University. My dissertation was about high achieving Black women. I chose that subject because I am a high achieving Black woman, but I was finding myself in a lot of struggles with relationships. And so when I would talk to my peers, they were having the same issues. And with those issues, we all kind of had some of the same frustrations about being able to be successful everywhere else, but within relationships. And the added component to it was that we had all experienced some form of emotional abuse. And so it was just fascinating to me. And when I got to the PhD level, I said, there's no way I'm not going to do my dissertation on something Black, because I got this far and there's not enough research about us done by us. And I kind of had to fight a little bit to get my research accepted, but I was not backing down. I was told, first they told me, was I sure I was going to get enough subjects? And so I had to let them know that's all I know. And I consider anybody in any level of success to be high achieving, because to me, just like me earning a PhD, somebody who raises 4 and 5 children successfully is a high achieving Black woman. So it's not discriminatory based only on finances. Of course, I had to narrow the research down when I did, my study, so I could get it done and get out of school and use my research. And so one of the topics that I came up with was 10 experiences of high achieving Black women that you never knew about. So do I just keep going, or you have questions for me, or I just jump in?
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, Dr. Megan, it's okay. We'll just give to other speakers to introduce themselves. Yes, thank you so much. And congratulations. Congratulations. Dr. J, do you want to say something about yourself? Introduce yourself to the community.
Yes, of course, I would love to do that. I'm Dr. J. Cisse Kurvali, and it's funny because Megan, I'm in Dallas, Texas, so we are almost neighbors. And I did get my bachelor's actually from UT Arlington, which is in your hood. So it's what a small wall. But I've been in nursing for, I would say, over 20 years. I don't want to say about my age here. And working as a nurse, I encountered a lot of male people that I did, physicians, who encouraged me to move forward and further my education. And I went into a nurse practitioner. From there, I went on and got my doctorate, and I'm here. I did trauma as a nurse, and I did it as a provider as well. And now I own my own family practice in Garland, Texas, which is in the same hood. It's in the Metroplex, and I'm happy to be here. And I also have 5 sisters. It's 5 of us that have a show. It's called the Sister Show. One of my sisters is a OBGYN in her residence in Austin, Texas. One of my other sister is in Houston, Texas, who is a makeup artist. She's a director for Dior. And the other sister did IT, and she is a VP for one of the banks that's based in England, but she's in Las Vegas. And Juka, who most people know, she's the third from me, and she's in LA, and she has her own business. She did accounting as well. So it's a lot of us, but we do have a great show, and we do similar things that you guys are doing. We've done mental health a lot of health education, a lot of different issues that are facing the Africans that we can make a difference. And I'm glad to be here today, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. J. See, this is the beauty of us. We are encouraged. We keep pushing. Congratulations, actually, with your show and your siblings. Next to her is Dr. Latonya will take you, and then we'll move to Daniel.
Hey, you guys. So I'm Dr. Latonya Thomas. I've been a registered nurse for 11 years. I'm currently in Houston, Texas. I'm from Louisiana. I've done every area of nursing that you can possibly think of: labor and delivery, surgery, trauma, med-surg, telemetry, pediatrics, float pool. I completed my doctorate last year in nursing practice. I also became a certified legal nurse consultant last year. I became a certified meditation instructor last year as well. And then I respectfully have two businesses, one for my consulting business and one for my meditation studio. Currently working on building my brand for my meditation studio to build that and build it upon my personal story and my issues with mental health and how that can be a platform and making a safe haven for people to talk about mental health, actually be comfortable, find alternative holistic treatments to deal with these mental health issues that we do. So my main goal is to break that stigma and to be a positive light in the community. And I think I've done just that. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. Yes. I can't wait to hear your story. Thank you so much, Dr. Latonya. We'll move to Daniel. Daniel, do you want to say something about yourself? Introduce yourself to the community.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here today yet again. I was last here some weeks back. Daniel is my name, Daniel Dileba Dratibi. I'm here in the capital of Uganda. Sorry, we are in lockdown, but we are not locked down really. Much as we are confined in our homes, but for us, we choose to still know that we have life to live. So we are not scared of the lockdown, and I'm glad to be here. I'm a high school teacher, and I've taught for 8 years. After that, I transitioned a bit into the religious work. I'm right now a pastor in one of the churches here in Uganda, and also an author for the book Overcome Rejection, Turn Your Greatest Dreams into Reality. And I know many of us can realize that rejection is one of the root causes for mental breakdowns and mental health challenges. So I chose to be able to be a voice, to be able to speak through it and let people know that, yeah, we can go through rejections, we can have mental challenges, but we can actually overcome this and we can live our lives to the fullest. So that's why I'm here today to still say a word to each one of us that we have life to live. I know rejections have happened, causing depression and so many things, but we are here to overcome it, and we can. Together we can. Thank you. I was here last time, but I'm glad to be here again today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you. That was beautiful. We're going to move next to Dr. Kevin. Hey, Dr. Kevin, do you want to give a brief intro of yourself? Your face is quite familiar here to this community.
Sawubona, Dr. Nada, how are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Excellent. So it is indeed a pleasure to be a part of this panel discussion. Dr. Thomas, I am also born in Louisiana. And so I don't know what part of Louisiana, but I'm currently the department chair of sociology and psychology at Grambling State University. I'm the founder of Ubuntu Psychotherapy and the owner of Nansapo Empowerment Works, that is mental health counseling organization, as well as Martha Speaks, and the YouTube channel is Speak Black to Me, where we speak truth to Black reality so that we don't have to sugarcoat or pander the conversation. It is about our truth and not trying to whitenize the dynamics of who we are as a people. So the work that we do deals with the idea of trauma within the context of people of African descent, in which we know that the family is the basic unit of any civilization. And that was the one thing that Europeans went after and have continued to attack, is the family, which is often destroyed through a variety of social cultural factors that impact how we relate to one another. And so domestic violence or interpartner violence becomes a part of that entire process. But the reality is to understand that health, healing, and wholeness comes in the context of knowing who you are, why you are, and what you are. And so that is what we talk about, is understanding the central location of our divine essence, our being in the world. And Brother Daniel is correct. The idea of rejection can lead us to depression. And the biggest part of rejection is when we begin to reject ourselves. And so we live in a space of self-hatred. And so I think it was mentioned about relationships, and we cannot be in a relationship with anyone else until we know how to love and relate to ourselves. And too often we expect others to do more for us than we're willing to do for ourselves. If we can't look in the mirror and love what we see without conditions, how do we ever expect somebody else to put conditions on what they see on us, in us? And so the reality is that we learn to disdain our hair, our skin, our essence, our being. And so the work that we do is about overcoming the trauma of European incursion to get back to the love of our true selves, and therefore we can have solid relationships with someone else. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Kevin. We're going to move to Dr. Dia. We just lost her. You know what? As our viewers are still here today, as I said, we're going to kick off with a topic that is very close to my heart: gender-based violence. You heard speakers here, they're talking about depression, rejection. I'm going to give a popcorn style here. Anyone who wants to start off, what is gender-based violence? Because a lot of times people don't realize they are in violent relationships. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Megan. You have an interesting story. I would like you to kick off there and define to us, to this community, what is gender-based violence?
Gender-based violence is violence so I'm a woman, so I'll say from a man to a woman. That's what it's going to be, but it's not always physical. And as you pointed to, my experience was emotional. And because emotional is the way that it is, and it's not outward, people don't recognize it. And sometimes you don't even recognize it when it's happening to you, because it's all verbal and psychological.
Right, right. You know what? As we have Daniel in the background there, to me, when we start seeing violence, it's a symptom. Daniel, do you want to actually tell us from a man's perspective, when men feel the rejection, do you feel like being violent towards people around you as something that you find as your space to voice what you are feeling inside? Is it always coming across as violent, or you have found yourself also probably emotionally abusing others around you? What was your experience when you felt rejection? How did you react to the surroundings around you?
Thank you. You know, one thing that we need to appreciate is hurting people hurt others. Yeah. And because hurting people hurt others, we get to life where we do life, and in the way we do life, different people keep hurting you, and before you know it, you want to defend yourself in one way or the other. So in the process, you become violent. Yeah. And when we talk about domestic violence, many times we focus on one aspect of the physical abuse, but domestic violence goes beyond the physical abuse. It goes even into the whole issue of the mental, the emotional, even the sex abuse, you know. So all those forms of abuses we go through. And now that you have asked me earlier on, maybe let me just quote from my book right here.
Go ahead.
One of the effects of rejection is actually it promotes domestic violence. Family settings that experience rejection are chaotic, abusive, and you realize that fighting becomes the order of the day. As a result, sometimes the children grow up seeing their parents fighting, and it becomes a normal trend. They think that's actually how life must go, and it becomes a circle. And many times, the people who are involved in domestic violence, if you trace backwards, you realize they grew up in families where domestic violence was order of the day, because they saw their parents fight, they saw their neighbors fight, and they think when something happens like that, the next thing is also to fight. So as a result, they grow up in that kind of environment. And also, like I was saying, when we see, the bottom line is the abusive behavior is not acceptable. When it comes to domestic violence, there is the abuser and the person who is abused. And this abuse can come in various forms, like the emotional abuse, the sexual abuse, the harassments, the abandonments. All those are forms of violence. So I want to challenge that when rejection comes, the first thing people normally do is to go into self-defense, and in the process become violent as they try to shield themselves from the reality of life. They think violence will actually solve the problem. Actually, it doesn't. It just promotes and escalates its impact on society and in the life of the people around.
That's amazing, Dan. And actually, I would like to hear from Dr. Latonya. What's the observation? Dan mentioned a few things. He talks about even the society. Basically, even community trauma could predispose children as they grow to actually see this template they are given that violence is the way to go. Dr. Latonya, what's the experience? You've seen so much working as a healthcare worker. Do you see any variation, or did you see at some point any variation? Because with domestic violence, we don't get to see a lot of middle class and upper class people coming forward. We see other people, other classes. We do see people that are struggling because they, for some reason, upper class and middle class, they tend to have that shame and the guilt. There's a lot of covering. There's a lot of shielding. What is the type of clients do you see at the hospital?
So I see a variety of clients, patients that come in that are dealing with things, and they don't have an outlet. They feel like it's not safe for them to speak on it. But, being a healthcare worker and being a registered nurse, that's something that we pick up on pretty frequently if something is going on. So we do have to report those things. And the biggest thing that I've seen in the pediatric population, is these young kids and babies being abused from broken homes because they have a mom and dad that's no longer together, but they are still abusive to one another, and they're taking that out on that child. And I've seen 8 months old, 6 months old with broken arms, broken legs. So here it is now. We have to take, as the healthcare providers, take that step to enforce rules and regulations and try to help them figure out what's going on, who did the damage, and how are we going to handle it from here? Is it going to be safe for this child? So it is a huge issue, especially in the healthcare realm, because we do have to notice those things and we have to act upon those things. So sometimes it can be difficult, being a parent. Now that I'm a parent, it's a little different, me working in the pediatric room and seeing those things, but they come from all walks of life. It's no set say, oh, this population or that population. They are every walk of life, race, background, socioeconomical status. It doesn't matter.
Yes. Thank you so much. Dr. J, do you want to comment on what Dr. Latonya is saying? Because I want to know, how come we still able to shield? Because I work with people that would mention, you hear, it's a hearsay that someone or a colleague is being abused, but how come we're not seeing people coming forward talking about this? Why are we not seeing people talking about it? Because I see globally, they say at least 1 to 3 women will experience or have experienced some form of abuse. But how come we're not hearing it? When we're sitting in our conversations, we sit with people, we sit with colleagues, but they never share what experiences they have with their spouses. You are muted, sis.
Thank you. What Latoya said is great. There's no boundary when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to abuse, when it comes to mental health. It happens everywhere. But the reason why we don't tend to see it or hear about it is the shame and the guilt that is put on to the victim. We don't look at the victimizer as the one that's causing the problem. We're looking at the victim herself or blaming the victim, saying, why did you stay there? Instead of trying to figure out what's going on with that person at that moment, it's easy for us to blame people for allowing things to happen. And when that happens, people always hide. They don't want to be the one to say I was abused, because they're worried about their sister, their cousin, their neighbor saying, oh, you stayed there, or you did this. But when you go back, like Dr. Kevin said, when you go back to trauma that happened to that individual, or maybe something that they accepted, their parents accepted, or their mom accepted in that environment, that will continue on with that person, because they're going to seek the same husband that looks like their dad. And maybe their dad was abusive too to their mom, and the mom accepted it. So this is now a norm for this person. So I think there's multiple factors that will have someone not say anything. And sometimes it's even financial. Like when you go back to Africa, we did a show about that, where women will accept certain things because they're worried about losing that coverage, that someone that's going to support them. So it's a problem. And I think until we start looking at the victim and trying to listen to the victim instead of blaming the victim for the act, then it will not change.
Thank you so much, Dr. J. You know what? You mentioned background. I want actually Dr. Kevin to take us through this background, because we have seen people who are doing well in their academic settings or socially. We say this person is doing well and is a strong-willed person. Dr. Kevin, how come strong women, as a definition, we say this person is quite a strong-willed person, very intact self-esteem, but they are in abusive relationships? How come they are attracting these narcissistic people and still stay in these relationships? Because when we sit socially, we say, she's such a strong woman. How can she stay in such a relationship? Take us through that. How come they cannot defend themselves in these type of relationships and this type of men they attract? Can you take us through that and how to break that?
Well, I mean, that is really heavy, a lot to unpack in a short space. But what I will do, I wanted to go back and commend Dr. Pickens on completing her degree and having the wherewithal to continue to make sure that her topic is addressed, even in a space where people did not want to honor her reality. That is a very common phenomenon for us within various programs, where as we have the idea, the thought, and the vision, and yet we are disavowed from having some credibility. So thank you for continuing. And Dr. Thomas, congratulations to you as well. So I wanted to make sure that we address something else as we talk about the idea of the profile of a person who can stay in a relationship. Too often we have the conversation in the direction of a woman being abused by a man. And we talk about, Dr. J was very clear when we talk about the shame and guilt that goes along with that. Think about the shame and guilt that goes along with a man who's abused by a woman. And so that conversation is not talked about very much. And so, and Daniel was very clear about something. And so we talk about the profile here in this short presentation or conversation, is that oftentimes we have to understand that also men are abused. I've had clients, and just came from a court situation watching this take place, where women are very abusive towards men. What gets acknowledged is the way that men handle types of abuse, whereas women would typically talk through the abuse and have the verbiage. And so we know that biologically, typically females speak earlier than do males. That is not the absolute, but that's a part of a norm. And males typically have gross motor skills more advanced than females, which means typically what happens is that males will take it to the park, take it to the ground, take it to the grass. So we're not going to talk a whole lot. We're going to get physical with the situation. Women will talk things through. And so when you talk about the breakdown or the abuse that takes place, the verbal abuse of disavowing a person in a relationship who's dealing with some other dynamics in a society creates a condition by which there's this major blow up. Doing research with black men, this is going to make this will make it all make sense. Black men were talking about working in corporate America, and they said the toughest part of their job was to be able to sit for the happy hour afterward with their coworkers. For them, the happy hour was driving home. Now think about a person who's on a job trying to navigate a space where they're perpetually being questioned, just as Dr. Pickens was questioned about about her topic, being questioned about every decision that they make. And then they get home and somebody says what they don't have or what I need or what you haven't done. It's like, wow, look, the one place that I can find peace, I can't even get peace here. And so we have to recognize that there's a lot that goes into our relationships. And so the question that you asked is, what is the profile of a person who would stay with an abuser? It goes both ways, males and females. The issue is to what extent does one honor and own themselves as having worth and value? And so we often give of ourselves to someone else in a relationship for a variety of reasons, and we can attract things to us that are bad for us, but actually good for our journey. And I want to be clear about this. It is bad for us, but it's good for our journey. And so too many times we don't understand how to separate the issue of what's bad for us, but the journey, it helps us to be able to learn to become a better person. So when we find ourselves in abusive relationships, many times we are abusing ourselves psychologically. And so if Dr. Pickens, for example, bought into the idea that she was inferior, that she was less than, then she was in an abusive relationship in the academic realm that never gets identified as abuse. But in reality, that was abuse. To say that, well, can you find someone? Can you find a population? That somebody question your credibility, that is abuse that never gets acknowledged. But if she didn't hold firm to say, yes, I know who I am, then they would have run roughshod and obliterated her. The idea is the same thing in relationships. We have to understand who we are and that we have value and worth. And many times it takes sometimes those knocks that aligns us with our purpose. But I want to be clear about this, Dr. Lunati, is that we often focus on men as abusers. But if we understand that abuse occurs on multiple levels, and as I mentioned, economic abuse of violence, violence of sexual violence, there are a variety of violences that take place that are abusive, and everyone on this call, everyone that's listening has been abused by someone verbally, that has a verbal scar that nobody can see. We often acknowledge the physical scars, but everybody's had somebody to say something to them that has hurt them deeply. And if we say the right things or the wrong things, it will bring that back up to the surface, and there we have an explosion. So we have to understand that if everybody's walking around with hurt and pain, then we have to be able to understand how not to hurt one another, because as Daniel said, hurt people. And so we have to learn to build one another. And that's the power of relationships, is building up one another to be stronger, because when you are strong, I'm able to be stronger, and therefore we're stronger together.
I loved it. Thank you so much, Dr. Kevin. And the sad thing is you mentioned men. We tend not to bring them forth to the table. And yet, right now, I was looking at the United States of States, the stats that men, at least 1 in 7 would report. And there's still that social stigma. Let's talk about the society we live in. Men would report these things, but even the police, they won't take them serious. They would mock them.
Let me give you a quick example, right?
Yes.
I apologize for cutting you off. This is real. A person was driving a car, and the woman was abusing him as he was driving the car. She was slapping himself. This is pre cell phone. So what he did was he pulled over to the side, went into a department store, called the police, and said that I just need you to follow me home so I can get my stuff and leave the house. The police got to the person, and this was in Texas, by the way, Dr. Thomas, J. and Pickens. And so the police officer said in this voice, "Do you mean to tell me that she hit you?" And then started laughing about it, right? So here's a person saying, I just need you to follow me so that I don't hit this person anymore. And yet he was ridiculed for calling the police. Now, if it had been the other way around, he would have been arrested on the spot, right? So we have to recognize these things are occurring, and I don't make it seem like it's only that men are not doing these things. I want to make sure that we know that we all are hurt, and we're hurting one another. We hurt one another with things that we say, the things that we do, and we cannot simply say that, oh, someone hit me and that's the problem. No, the reality is that you may have struck 5 or 6 times before that person even struck you, but you don't know how you struck them and how deeply it cut them as well. Is that making sense?
Yes, it does. It does. And you know what, Dr. Kevin, it's not only in the States, even in South Africa. I'm South African. This is a global thing. We also have a society that is not supportive of men. We mock them. The society that we live in mocks men. And let's talk about the part now when it gets to a point where there's substance abuse, because we see this. We see this, and I don't want us to think that substance abuse is just only in a certain class. Can we talk about substance abuse? Because we have high functioning alcoholics that show up at work, that show up, and they are CEOs of companies. I mean, these people, they are leading even in their families, but there is substance abuse that leads to gender-based violence. I'm going to leave this to anyone here who wants to comment on that.
Hey, I am enjoying the show. You know, I want to begin from our experience. Now I'm talking from the African perspective, being that I'm here in Uganda.
Yes.
Even this year, even last years, men have been beaten by their wives. When they report to police, this is what the police asks: are you a man? How can a woman beat you up? You know, and as a result, they even laugh at the men, so the men don't follow up the cases. But abuse is happening everywhere. Now, this is what happens. Where a man, for example, here in Uganda, where a man has been abused and he wants to share his experience, he is stopped. He's told, you be a man. This is not supposed to be shared. Are you a woman to share? Like I like what my brother was saying. We assume that it is the women who can only talk through their issues. Men have to endure as men. They don't have to open up. Now, by the time you realize that a man has a problem is when a man has become a serial womanizer. You see that a man has become a serial drug addict. You see a man has become a total waste. That's when you see that a man actually has a problem. Then you say, oh, let's help this young man. But by the time he needed help, nobody was there to help him. Because this was a man who was struggling, who has been abused, who has been harassed, you know, in all forms. And when he tried to speak it up, he was stopped from speaking. So the only way he can then have is he shuts up, gets isolated from people because he doesn't see any help coming anywhere else now. So the only thing now he does, transfers all his frustration to alcohol and other drugs in order to feel good. But actually, even that is also another way where he's actually destroying himself more. But then like I was saying earlier on, abuse comes in all forms, in all kinds of relationships. Anyone can be abused, but the biggest problem is from the upbringing. You do what you know, and probably what you know is what actually you have seen and what you have practiced, right? Now, when you grew up in a community where your parents have been fighting, the neighbors are fighting, people are taking these drugs for free, and it is just for fun, definitely you will be part. That explains why somebody can be in an abusive relationship but doesn't quit. Why? That is how they saw their parents stay, so they can't quit. That is how they saw their neighbors stay, even after being beaten and flogged and stuff, because that's what they saw. And that is how the environment has conditioned us. And that is where we are now saying, no, look here, this has been there. Some of these things came because of the inferiority complex that came from other sources, from other, people. Can we now rise up as Africans? Can we own these things? Can we rise on our feet and say, you know what, enough is enough? We want to have a better lives for all blacks. We want to have a better lives for everyone, not only blacks, but all races. Can we get our butts up and we begin to realize this, and we begin to take the actions that needed to be taken? Because that is how we've been conditioned. That is how we were raised, being told that you're not good enough, being told that this is not for you. This is then at the end of the day, only what we do is feeling sad. We feel empty. We feel hopeless. So the only thing we want to do is to have an angry outburst to be able to show that I'm also yet here in existence. But actually, it is coming from that place of emptiness.
That was mouthful. I loved it, Dan. And you keep mentioning the society because we tend to underestimate how the influence of societies we live in. Look at when a child is living in a situation where there's gangsters, and that's basically the introduction of life. Let's talk more about the symptoms of the mental health mental health struggles that come with this abuse. I'm gonna let Dr. J say something on this. What are the symptoms so that people can realize that this is abuse that I have, this is anxiety that I have here? Because we can't deny that people even live with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from gender-based violence.
Thank you. That's really important, because the symptoms is what will help us identify the people, or the people themselves be able to identify themselves as being a victim, or as having depression, or having any other psychological issues that was created by the violence itself. When he said society has a lot of influence on how we behave and how we act. Now, if you were in an environment that created that negative impact on how you view yourself as an individual, you are already withdrawn. Now you get into a relationship, whether it's a man or a woman, and now the things that you've learned in the past that are still in your memory, that you still, the abuse that you lived in the environment, whether it was coming from your mom, your dad, or the neighbor, or the brothers, or someone in school that was very abusive. Now you're grown and you see the same thing that's happening in your environment. Most people will either hide and be very seclusive. They don't want to be associated with a lot of people, because if they do, they would lash out, because you get agitated easily, you get angry easily, because you're becoming depressed. You're reminding yourself of the past. Now you're depressed because of the past, and you're seeing it in your future. You think there is no way for you to go. What are you going to result to? You're going to result to being angry, difficult to communicate with, and people will call you difficult. Now, people calling you difficult lead you to be even more difficult, because then you want to isolate yourself. So it's almost like a cycle. You grew up from a difficult environment. Now you yourself see the environment as difficult. Now people are calling you difficult because of you're angry. You don't know how to express yourself. So it's like, where do we go from here? How do we help these people if we call them difficult because we don't understand where they're coming from? We don't understand what's going on in their heads. So I think as a society, for us to help ourselves to change, we all have to look at within ourselves. Because I always tell people, if you keep crying out loud, we have a problem, we have a problem, we have a problem. You as an individual, what are you going to do towards that problem to make a difference? Because if we all know we have a problem, what are we going to do individually to make a difference? Because I can't make you make a difference. I cannot make anyone else on this panel make a difference. But who I am in control of is me, myself. What can I do as a Black woman, as a Black person, help my community to make a difference? And I think if I can make one change by not calling someone difficult and try to understand why they're difficult, maybe I can help that.
That was empowering, Dr. J. You know what, Dr. J, lately I have learned to say what happened to this person. Once we start understanding people's behaviors and how they are coming across, and stop the notion of what's wrong with you. We come from a place of love and compassion, like Dr. Kevin. We injure people with our words every day, and we don't realize the scars we are causing on people because they are not visible. So this is actually a very good panel to give us to that awareness. So how do we heal? Dr. Megan, I would like to hear from you. What advice would you give to a man or to a woman here who is going through emotional abuse? How does she or does he move forward?
I second what Dr. J said about having, you as an individual making changes. As I practice in marriage and family therapy, one of the things that I liked about it is that it is systems focused. And so what we learn is that if you make one change in the system, then you affect change in the system, but you cannot make people change, as she said. Now, I don't necessarily, I am in the mental health field, but I do understand that all the previous theories are written by white males for white females, and then secondly, white females. So I do understand that those need to be adapted and become culturally competent so that they are helpful to us. The first step that I would say that somebody needs to take, and when I'm speaking to the people that have experienced this, is to set that first boundary. If you look at it as a whole experience, then you will become discouraged and not know how to get out the situation. So in my own personal experience, the first thing I did was I no longer accepted harsh talk, rough talk, whatever you want to call it. I started saying that you will not curse at me, around me, or to me. And that was my hard boundary. And I maintained that for quite some time before I moved to the next thing. Now, when I'm talking to my clients about it, I'm also letting them know, because I learned from experience, that you have to get ready for the fight when you do that. And it might not be a physical fight, but people do not like you to set boundaries because it no longer benefits them. They are unable to use you, run over you, or whatever they may be currently doing. So when you set boundaries, you are ready for a psychological battle. And so that's where I would say to start off by setting that one boundary, holding it, sharing your experience with someone that you trust. It doesn't have to be a bunch of people, but you need to have a backup just for safety purposes, and go forward from there. Have a plan to get out, though, if you need to, or stay, but be ready for battle either way.
That's powerful, Dr. Megan. You know what? I would like to hear from Dr. Latoya. How do we advise a person who gives a reason for staying? I'm staying for my children. We hear this a lot. I'm staying for my children. I don't want to separate from their father or from their mother because they need to be here with us. How do we empower people, our viewers here, to understand healthy co-parenting?
I think the huge ordeal with that is you can't be, if it's an abusive situation and you've gone through these things and you guys are not being cohesive and being able to co-parent as a whole, it puts a huge strain on the relationship itself. And then you project that onto your children, and that's something that you don't want your children to see. So it's kind of hard to, I know from experience, to try to accept that, hey, this relationship is ending. This is what we have to do. And it takes time. It takes time and it takes effort from both parents to say, okay, I'm not happy being in this situation, so this is what I'm going to change. But knowing the end goal and the end result, and you both agreeing on that, being able to move forward would make you co-parenting so much easier. And I wouldn't advise, like I said, for you to stay in a relationship or to stay in a situation because you want to maintain the cohesiveness of the family, because it's not going to be beneficial to you. It's not going to be beneficial to that person, and it's not going to be beneficial to the children, because it's not fair to the children. They should have a happy environment. They should be able to thrive. They shouldn't have to be able to say, oh, I have to choose between my mom or my dad. It should be something that is happy, cohesive, and they are able to co-parent successfully to ultimately bring out the best in your children, no matter what your situation is or how I grew up and how he grew up. Those things shouldn't even be the focus anymore. It's about breaking those generational curses and those past behaviors that you're used to make that change and actually bring about a change to your children.
Love it.
And if I could just jump in and dispel a myth that people have about what Dr. Thomas said. People will tell me all the time, oh, my children have no idea what's going on. We don't fight in front of them. We don't curse at each other. We don't do anything in front of them. But I have seen children, and they will come in the office and they say, my parents think I don't know that they hate each other. I wish they would get a divorce. I've seen them fight. They don't like each other. They don't hug. They don't even talk to each other. And those are things that children do pick up on. The parents think they're hiding, but they're not. And so they are passing down those same kind of negative reactions to their children, who then pass on through generations.
I couldn't have said it any better, Dr. Megan. We hear this all the time in clinical practice. And the sad part is parents don't realize the energy, because children, they pick up energy. They're angelic. They pick up energy even when there's some discord in the family. Thank you actually for amplifying that. I would like to hear from Dan as a pastor, because there's a role these leaders have on relationships. Let's talk about the religion. How does it play a role in this? Because we've seen pastors or people who that's Christian, or maybe people who are in Muslim families, where they are told not to leave this marriage because the Bible says stay together till the end. I would like to hear you and also Dr. Kevin. How do we advise people who are unfortunately flooded with all of this? Because I feel it's a religion more than being rational about these situations.
Thank you. When it comes to issues of relationships and marriage in that matter, one thing we need to appreciate is always I ask people who come to me for counseling, who come for counsel. And when they're having issues, my first question normally to them is, how did it start? How did your relationship begin? What brought you together? What was the cause of attraction? How did it actually start? How did your journey of friendship and marriage begin? And then along the way, that's when you discover some of these challenges coming in. But then you go back to what the Bible teaches. Yeah? Then you ask, okay, so what is it in the Bible for us? Because all begins from the foundation. If the foundation be destroyed, then there's nothing we can do. That's what the Bible says. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? So it all begins from the foundation. If you met somebody who has been heartbroken and maybe has been abandoned and rejected and is all there by themselves, maybe they are in a bar, and then you meet them from the bar, and then you want to take them to church, and then you want to begin marriage. You know, it doesn't work. How is the foundation of the relationship? If it has been a shaky one, then definitely nothing will move. I am one person who doesn't believe in divorce, and I'm also one person who doesn't believe in suicide and murder. Yeah. So it is.
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah. So I'm saying here, it all begins from how did the relationship begin? Who were involved in it? Because that also has a bigger holding to do with its structures. If the foundation of the relationship is not built properly, then even in the church may not have anything to do much.
That's true. That's true. But we do see, though, some pastors who continue with the advice, with the counsel that make it work. How do you make it work when it's such? Dr. Kevin, I would like to hear from you. What are your thoughts about the impact parents also have in this young couple or this couple or their relatives? Because as Black people, we are an extended family structure. You want to divorce or you are going through stuff with your spouse. What is the role of parents? Because we've seen parents also contributing heavily and negatively on couples and keep them pushing forward, despite seeing things that are not working. What is the solution for such couple?
So you're absolutely right that social cultural systems can actually impact relationships. And so the church is one of those. And I'm also a priest. And so we talk about the idea of how many times how religion can create a condition by which there's false expectations, and then it can cause a lot of confusion in relationships. And so the idea about what the marriage bed is about. Well, if there is abuse in a relationship, then the marriage bed is not sacred in the first place, right? So we have to be clear about the languaging, and we use religion, whether it is an Abrahamic religion of Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, or even using Ifa or Akan. Any religion can be used to create something that could be very harmful and extremely helpful. So when we talk about, Daniel mentioned the idea of the Bible, talk about the issue of a covenant. Marriage is a covenant. It is an agreement. Agreement has parties agreeing to how it will be conducted, what will take place, expectations. So in reality, marriage is a business. And so we talk about business partners coming together for the sanctity of the organization, being the family. And so when those things are violated, no matter how they're violated, then the business contract, there's a breach in the contract, and there is time to make a decision as to how to excommunicate a partner out of the business. And so we cannot have this languaging about as Daniel said, about being not for divorce. I'm not necessarily for marriage and divorce. The idea is, if the business is not working, then one partner needs to go from the other partner so that the business can flourish in another way. Parents, family members often sit there and they create the condition by having saying, stay there, work it out. What are you going to do? The idea of money, of financial issues, but the reality is a whole and sound mind is that what leads you to health, wealth, and prosperity. That's what our ancients told us a long time ago. And so when there is some level of consternation, there's some level of not honoring the contract of the relationship, then people, and I think Dr. J said it best about listening to the victim. It is important to listen to what's being said, not impose your values and beliefs on what's happening, but listen completely to what's happening, what's going on, what the person is telling you, and then go from there. And that's a personal experience in a marriage, and still having just yesterday, 2 days ago, go to court, and the person is still abusive towards me in the court about what I am and not doing. And the reality is that when I mention these things happening in my family, they say, well, she's not upset with me. That's not the point. Is I'm telling you that this is an abusive situation that I'm in. How do we begin to navigate that? And it wasn't until they receive some of the abuse that they say, oh, you were right. The point is that families have to be able to listen. People have to be able to have some level of support, listen to one another's truth, and then begin to honor the integrity of the person involved in the relationship, and how do we support them in being stronger. If they are wrong or right, the issue is that it's their truth, and their truth in a relationship is what we have to honor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kevin. You know what? I loved your analogy of this is like a business. And I think until we respect that and also understand and appreciate the truth of people who are experiencing abuse, I don't want to end this conversation, but it's coming to an end. I would like each one of you to throw some words here. I'll start with you, Dr. Latoya. Throw some words here for our viewers. What advice would you give so that people can go home and chew and think about their own situations? Just 2 seconds, each one of you guys.
I would say the biggest thing is self-reflection. Self-reflect for yourself. And if you're in an abusive relationship, use that self-reflection to help you catapult what you need to change.
That's powerful. Dr. J, do you want to say something?
Yes. It was a great conversation, and I wish it wasn't ending, but everything that's good always have to come to an end. And what I would like to say is that empathy. We all have to have empathy towards each other. Don't think you know when you have not been there. If you have empathy, obviously you will definitely listen, and that will allow us to be able to come to a solution for all the problems that we face in society, especially in the Black community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sis. That was powerful. Dr. Megan?
I just want to thank you again so much for having me. I just want to say to us, Black men, Black women, Black people, high achieving, everyday people, it is time that we define ourselves. It's time that we conduct studies for and about ourselves. We all survived 2020. It is 2021, and we need to take a stand against the stereotypes about us, the things that they have put into our system, and go back to where we actually came from and our collective care that we had for each other. I fought to conduct my research, and I didn't take no. So you don't take no either. You let us tell who we are. Nobody can tell us who we are. We define who we are.
That was empowering. Thank you so much, Dr. Megan. Dan, do you want to say something before we wrap up here with Dr. Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to add a voice. Conditions have conditioned us to be where we are. But when we realize who we are, we will not settle for what is not actually meant for us. But then to get out of there, I want to challenge that let's invest in ourselves. Let's invest in ourselves and get out of the dust, shake off the dust, and keep moving.
Thank you so much, Dan. Dr. Kevin, do you want to give your last words here?
Last word, right? The basis of all love is self-love. And so we must understand that we have a lot to love. And so when we love ourselves, we know how to demand others to treat us with respect, dignity, and with honor. And so it is an honor to be able to be a part of this, to be able to share with such powerful people. And we have to stay in touch. I put my email in our private chat because I want to stay in touch. I want to do more work. But the basis of all love is self-love. And self-love does not mean to be selfish. It means to have honor for the divinity of one's reality. And so I know that I'm a seed of a seed of a seed of a seed of the seed, therefore.
That was amazing, Dr. Kevin. To our viewers here, I can see you are still here. As the speakers poured to our hearts, let this be something we're going to go home with, digest it, absorb it. As Dr. J said, let's practice empathy, compassion for others. Let's come from a place of what happened to her, what happened to him. Let's learn to understand people. More than anything, let's love ourselves. Let's go back to our divinity as a Black people. The beauty about being Black, we are a very integrated system. I wish for us to go back to that and respect each other, love each other, and change the narratives and the stereotypes about Black people. Again, thanks so much. Stay with us here. We're going to our second part of this conversation. From me, Dr. Unathi Makiwane, I wish